Let's get ready to rumble. Hey everybody, it's Amy with Ask a Christian. I have a real fun topic today. Leonie from South Africa writes, a question that pops up many times is, should we Christians take the new ID chip? 90% of the people that I know think that it's the mark of the beast. What do you think? Could the microchip be the mark of the beast in Revelation? Why or why not? I'm tossing this to you, my audience friends. And even if it's not, which you'll find out is my position, is there anything to be concerned about? So let's get into this morning. And I just want to say thank you for joining me. Happy Wednesday, happy lunch hour. I try to do this around 11 o'clock every week because that's when I usually take my lunch. And then kind of like across the US, maybe it's lunch hour, and I think maybe we could hang out a little bit together over lunch, have some discussion. So in case you were wondering, that's what it's all about. Leonie, I just want to thank you for taking time to write Ask a Christian. In case anybody else has questions, the best way to get a hold of me is askachristianfriend@gmail.com. Of course, you can leave comments on YouTube. It's harder for me to see and get back to those. And you can also hang out with me on Facebook. I do have some new appointment times. So we can pray together. We can talk about your Bible questions or just your life questions. Can't guarantee that I am great at answering them, but I can be there for you. And let me know if you are in my area, in the Sunnyvale area, because after COVID's over, we might be able to sync up. Anyway, all right, let's start with an easier question. What is a microchip? All right, microchips are very small pieces of conductor material, silicon, sand, that carry information usually it's in zeros and ones. So it's small bits of information. They're about the size of a grain of rice, the kind that we're talking about today. The kind that go in like electronics are fingernail size, smaller. But size the grain of rice, they are cylindrical barcodes that when scanned transmit a unique signal through a layer of skin. So if you've had your pet's microchip or you've heard of that, it's the same thing. It's very similar to what humans are now getting implanted with. So they have generally in the past been used to organize products, inventory coming in and out of warehouses, livestock, pets, you get that. And there has been some human experimentation. What can we do with them in a human? But microchips are not tracking devices. That's the thing I wanted to make sure to say to you today, that microchips are not tracking devices. They don't give off a signal where someone can just look up your chip and know where you are. How they function with pets and how they could function with humans is that whenever a scanner is passed over them, now, if you're shopping in a store or if your pet is at the vet, now you can bring up that information on a computer system, trace, hey, this barcode goes to this home address and phone number. And so you then know who that person is. So these are just things to keep in mind as we go through this topic and study. And by the way, if you have any questions on anything that I'm talking about in the moment, of course, you are welcome to put in your questions as we go along, but I will save most of them for the end. All right, so that's what a microchip is and what it has done. And like I said, when that scanner is passed over the chip, that's when it gives that chip enough power to transmit an ID number or any other tiny bit of information. So who is using microchips now? There are programs in a lot of countries trying to start this thing up, but the pioneer of this really has been the Swedes. The greatest use has been in Sweden, where about 6,000 people have been chipped. They're generally using it for bus transport. They started, the guy who was really at the forefront of advocating it was a state-owned train company guy. I cannot say his name because he's Swedish, but And then there was a politician who is going along with it, part of the government's traffic committee. So a big push to just be able to scan your bus pass. Another company that I was reading about last night, Biohacks Italia, is waiting for approval in Italy from medical centers and from their Ministry of Health. Eric Larson, who is a leader at Biohacks, says that he expects to implant a chip into about 2,500 people in the first 6 to 8 months in Milan and Rome after they get the approval. So it's really experimental. And there are some in the US. There have been a couple really publicity stunts that have happened in the US where companies get a few of their people, a few of their leaders chipped for a certain purpose to show what would be possible in the future. One of those companies was a vending machine company who implanted a chip so that people could get their snacks that way. So anyway, again, it is not a GPS tracking device. Right now, it doesn't have the same information. It's not linked to your bank account with credit card payment, although that's one of the major pushes for why it's coming, especially in pandemic, is that we would have the convenience of cashless paying without billions of different apps. So it would be convenient for people, especially for business owners, of course, to be able to take payment that way. Currently, it's not used to store our personal medical information, though that's another thing, and we'll talk about that, why that could be a good thing in a little bit. But I do want to get to the discussion about why and how this could be related to the mark of the beast. So you can go somewhere else for your tech news, but I want to link it to the Bible discussion. Also do want to apologize. There's somebody loudly leaf blowing outside of the apartment window today. So if you hear that buzz, my apologies to you. All right, let's open up the Bible a little bit because I want to show you why I think this has been going around, why it's been getting attention, and why people are, especially Christians, are super worried about this. And just so you know, I do sympathize. I've got some worries myself, not necessarily related to the mark of the beast, but definitely concerning privacy. So please don't think you are alone in this. But let's look at how people are tying the mark of the beast to this chip, to cashless societies. We're going to take a little bit of time to unpack it, so settle in. And let's turn over to Revelation 13, where we can get a mini view of what's going on. By the way, if you're new to the Bible and you've heard that Revelation is scary, it can be a little scary because there are these ferocious beasts representative of different kingdoms or powers. So I want you to know what a beast is first. So in Revelation, John is having a vision here in chapter 13 about three entities. The first you come across is the dragon, who represents Satan. And then you have these two beast powers, one from the sea and one from the land. As I mentioned, a beast is simply a ruling power. The name or title doesn't matter. It could represent a king, a chancellor, a president. It's just, it's what nation or people group or power is in charge at the time. So that might help you not be quite so scared as we go through Revelation. So you can also read the book of Daniel to see which kingdoms represent what animals. But for our purposes, we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty today. We don't need to name these beasts. We just need to understand what they're after, what's the purpose, and that's going to lead us to our answer today. So, what are these beasts after? Now, a lot of people read this passage in Revelation 13 and they see the coercion, they see the fear, but they don't actually get what all of this is about. And I want you to be one of the few who does get it. Please check out verses 5 through 7. So let's go there. Revelation chapter 13, verses 5 through 7. I'm going to go in my New King James. I've been reading out of the Message Bible for fun, but it goes in chunks, not in verses. So let's do this one today. Revelation 13. And We're going to look at verses 5 through 7 to really get our mind around what's going on here. By the way, I do love this Bible, and I do love this chapter. As you can see, I've got it all marked up. All right, so 5 through 7, this is about the first beast. It's giving us clues as to what he's after. And he was given a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies. He was given authority to continue 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. Okay. Oh, let's go ahead and read verse 8. And all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the land of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Okay, so what is this beast after? Why is he doing what he's doing? The answer is simple. The word is worship. This is religious language that John is using about this vision, because we're talking about blaspheming against God, his tabernacle, and his people. So whoever this power is, and we don't need to find out today, you can hit me up for a different Bible study on a different time. Whoever this beast power is a power that practices blasphemy. Now, what's blasphemy? A lot of people grow up when they're kids thinking it's just saying, like bad things in church, or, saying irreverent words, but irreverence and blasphemy are not the same. Blasphemy has specific biblical definitions of claiming to be God, persecuting the saints of God in the name of God, and claiming to have the power to forgive sins. I can show you those Bible verses later. But blasphemy is really saying, I am God, I'm in charge, I deserve your worship. So whomever this power is, it's a religious power, and they are after worship. Is that clear? If not, you can message me later. All right, so that is the beast from the sea, the first beast. Now remember, we're going through all of this very quickly just so you can see what the mark of the beast might be. It's going to have to do with worship. All right, and then the second beast from the earth comes up, and it's also talking about worship. Take the time and read Revelation. Underline all the places where the word worship is, and then underline all the places where there's coercion, and you'll see that whatever this final battle, this final power of control is over worship. All right. Also, before we leave that, let's go to verse 12, which is about the second beast. It says, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So what you got to know is that the second beast is basically like the henchman, the hit crew. Pardon me. I did not need my phone. So the second beast is like the hitman for the first beast mafia. That's really what you have to remember for this discussion. All right, so he is enforcing the worship of the first beast. And now we get to the big question, which is, what is his mark? Verse 16 talks about a mark that this beast forces on people's hands or foreheads, their right hand or their forehead. Now, volumes and books have been written speculating what is this mark. It could be a tattoo, a barcode, or maybe it's a microchip implant. But the Greek word, let me say this right, charagma, the Greek word charagma, comes up in Revelation 14:9, and it means a scratch or etching, like a stamp or a badge of servitude. Strong's Hebrew and Greek dictionaries tell us. So a mark of anything is a branding, a sign of belonging. So maybe you could think of it as a mark. The mark of the beast is really the mark that shows the world that you belong, that you identify with this beast power. Now, remember, we are in Revelation, which is a book of signs and symbols. So we're not talking about a Nike swoosh emblazoned on your hand, or we're not talking about a Lacoste crocodile in your forehead. It's a symbol, a vision of representation. So just like the beast is not actually an animal, but represents a kingdom, that his mark is not physical. Rather, it represents the things, get this now, that people will believe or do as a sign of their allegiance to this power. How do you think and act because you are part of this power's club or system? So that's the whole battle in the Bible, and it's only been about this one thing: who deserves worship? God asks us to worship him in spirit and in truth. He wants us to know what he says, and he wants us to know how to be guided by the Spirit, that not just obeying the letter of the law, but our understanding of God and his character. Now, this beast power, fueled by the enemy, by the way, we talked about the dragon being there and setting this whole thing up. Satan, the enemy, the dragon, sets up anything he can, any system he can, to prove to the universe that God is not wanted and not worthy. So that's the whole point of Revelation 13, is there are a group of people following the Lamb who wants to do it God's way, and there's a group of people who, either because they truly believe it or they just go along with it, are doing things that support false worship. Okay, so finally, what does this cashless society have to do with anything? I've been seeing tons of posts on Facebook, some of them wrongly attributed, and I want to look at that for a little bit. By the way, I see you out there, see you watching. Thank you for your thumbs up and your feedback. Feel free to join in with the comments and discussion as you will. All right, so what does this have to do with the cashless, the buying, the selling? All right, the final verse we'll look at in Revelation is verse 16. So here's 16 and 17 again. The second beast, he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. All right, so that's where people are linking these. That's why people are getting scared, because they see something in the hand and they think, oh, that must be the mark of the beast. That must mean we can't buy or sell. So it does seem like there are going to be restrictions on God's people, those people who are true to God and his way of worship in the end times. And it does appear to be linked with buying and selling. Many scholars believe the threat of not being able to buy staples and what you need is going to be enough to coerce many people to go along with the beast's ways and his methods. So I also want to throw something else in there that I've been wondering and studying about. It's possible, since this vision is representative, that we're not just talking about buying and selling food. I think we could be talking very easily about buying and selling ideas. There would be restrictions on freedoms of speech, etc. I have not found that buying and selling has to just be economic, but I reserve the right to be wrong. Please, Bible scholars, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's I haven't found buying and selling restricted to economic measures there. So anyway, there's more things to look at. All right, so there are restrictions that Revelation mentions that would be of a coercive nature, and taking away all cash options would make those intent on control more empowered to do so. Again, not because they can track your every move, but because when you go to scan or check out, it could flag somebody, they could target you. However, I will say that if you own a credit card or debit card, you are already up for that. So it wouldn't be a huge difference between being able to track you through your bank and all the info associated with that, and being able to track you through an ID number that went to your bank. It'd be one step removed, actually. So let me reiterate and summarize and try to make it a little bit clearer. The mark of the beast is not physical. It represents the ideas and works of those that pledge allegiance to the beast. Again, the mark of the beast is not physical. It represents the ideas and the works, that's why the forehead and hands, of those who are on this false power team. So some people will go along with false worship because they really believe it makes sense to them. They haven't studied the word of God. They don't care. Others will go along because it's convenient. Sorry, that's what I was saying. The mark of the beast is a mark of character and of action. It's not a tattoo, barcode, or implant. And even though microchips will never be the mark of worshiping the beast power, it could be a tool to help control people. Using microchips to replace cash payment forms could mean that in an extreme situation, the government could decide to single you out and ask to be notified when you are making transactions or when you showed up at the hospital or those things. It could. Is it a big chance? I don't think so. I think that if the government wants to find you, they can find you. So that leads me to some of my final thoughts. How should Christians act in this time of fear and under these movements to maybe go to a cashless society? What should Christians be doing? How should we be facing this? All right, it's time for you to chime in now because I want to see your comments. How should we be reacting to this? Number one, not with fear, right? We should not be the ones perpetuating fear or false information. Because, like I said, if somebody wants to find you for some reason, if you have a bank account, if you have a credit or debit account, you are already traceable. So don't freak out about putting something in your skin. It's really not any more of a worry than what you're already doing. Now, if you are just a cash-based person anyway, and you already have some distrust about that, this is right up your alley and you're not going to get a chip. But again, we should not be reacting with fear or misinformation. I have seen in the last week 4 or 5 people on my friends list post a Dave Ramsey rant that talks about why we should not have a cashless society. Have you seen that? Let's go look at that real quick. Dave Ramsey, cashless society. Okay. I'll link this below in case somebody wants to see it. So this is a misattribution. Dave Ramsey tweeted that it was certainly not him and that he wasn't the writer of this fine piece of info. But I need to make this bigger. Okay, so here are some of the things that are said on this. It says, pay attention, people. Here's what no cash actually means. By the way, places that are already interested in this have made provision for people who operate with cash. Like they are saying you are forced to take cash because there's just some people who operate that way, and we want to create an equal place for all of our citizens. So whether or not we ended up in cashless society is a whole nother discussion. But okay, if you're struggling with your mortgage on a particular month, you can't do an odd job to get you through. Okay, you can't do an odd job and get paid by PayPal or a credit card. This is how I survive. So I'm already living that way, and I do odd jobs, and I do get money through different cash sharing apps. So baloney. Your child can't go to help the local farmer earn a bit of summer cash. I don't know why any of these apply. No more cash slipped into the hands of a child is a good luck charm from their grandparent when going on holidays. Exactly, right. That would be a little bit more difficult. Can't get that birthday card cash, but you can do a gift card. There's all kinds of ways to send money. So a lot of these are just baloney. So, and then the one that really got me is no more charity collections. Listen, there's going to be charity collections. 501c3s are not going away just because cash went away. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is that all the things on that are not true and not something to be worried about. But here's the switch around, right? There is something to be worried about in increased control and increased Big Brother observations. I am not going to pretend that, but here's what I want to say. We have to balance, Christians especially, be balanced, because there is a very real possibility of data breach, but there are also very amazing, helpful conveniences in some of these technologies. And we would be silly to just say it's one or the other. So imagine never having to worried about forgetting your wallet again or your driver's license, knowing that your family could be extra protected because of the chip. So something happens to you or a kid, and heaven forbid you're unconscious, then, if we can get medical data on these chips, then no problem. Like, you already know who this person is, you already know what kind of care, if they have allergies, etc. So I just want to say we should take a balanced approach to this. Now, finally, I do realize I've been chatting for almost a half an hour. Oh, I do want to say hello to Usman Malik. And I don't know how to say your name. Uhina? That's pretty. Uhina Brown. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to pop up your comment up here before I go into the last thing. Praying and rooted in the word by connecting to other believers. Really appreciate that. All right. So here, as I go into the whole reason I wanted to answer Leonie's question is because I think you'll notice more and more worries, more and more things that people are calling conspiracy theories. I don't say that distastefully in this situation, because if you don't believe in conspiracy theories, you are a nut job. If you believe that everything is out in the open and safe and easy to consume, you're silly. You don't have to go far to find people chasing power and money, lying to accomplish their big goals. I was reading last night about Richard Nixon and his secret bombing of Cambodia, etc. So it's just, if you don't believe that there are people up to bad business, then you're silly. Okay, so but on to conspiracy theories. Just because evil may be true doesn't mean we have to talk about it. Just because these conspiracies might be true and even have evidence does not mean we have to talk about it. I like to close with an illustration from one of my favorite preachers and teachers. His name is David Ashrick. He does a talk where he explains something called the table of truth. So imagine that you have a small tabletop in front of you right now. It represents all the time and the influence that you have in this world, my friend. And you do have time and influence, whether it's just family, friends, and relatives, or you work at a school, or whatever your company is. Here's the thing. On this small tabletop of our time and influence, we don't have room for everything. If you told me everything that was true in this world and asked me to carry it, I couldn't. So our goals as Christians is to take this tabletop of our lives, our time and our influence, and only put things on the tabletop that are the most true and the most worthy and capable of changing the good versus evil conflict for the kingdom of God. So you don't have room for everything. There are tons of things that are true and probably even worthy, but say no to all of those except the most important. If you're a Christian and you are thinking and talking and worrying more about what the enemy is doing than what God is doing, cut it out. Stop it right now. Make a decision that it's not worth it to put on your tabletop. If the world is truly heading downward fast, please take a counterattack position. You have the knowledge of God implanted in your hand and your forehead, and you can show the world what love is, and you can draw them to God and to Jesus. So that's it for today's Q&A. Thank you again to Leonie from South Africa for sending in her question. Thank you guys for joining me. If you have a question for me, the best place to ask it is askachristianfriend@gmail.com, but you can, of course, always comment on YouTube or find me on Facebook, and I'd love to make an appointment with you for prayer or your questions. And especially if you are close to me in Sunnyvale, California, I want to hear from you. Now, until next time, send me your questions, and I'm wishing you joy and peace for your journey. Thanks so much. I'll stick around just for a minute and see if you have any questions or prayer requests. All right, I guess that's it for now. See you next time. Bye.